going to read number Kaf Hey. Naskil Bebira Bracha. Let's start explaining the Bracha says. The word Baruch, the Kavim Bezeki Noidahu, as we know, Shazakana the Malasha Bebirchas Yotzer, or when we at that stage, Ad Sov Gwal Yisawel, Alino Res Malchus, Ad Hechel Kodu Gedash and Bria, we bring Malchus all the way up to the very top of Bria. So this is now one dot, he says, that's coming up, and it has 10 different parts to it. It has 10 parts. But parts of, but it's still not a parts of. Well, I'm having terrible trouble with my camera, so I don't know what to do about it, but nothing I can think of to stop it from doing this. I guess its days are over. Not sure what the problem is. Okay, it seems to be steady, but I gotta get another camera. So he says, where are we now? So he says, so it has 10 parts, but they don't work right. Because it's still the situation where Malchus has to be small. She has to be minimize herself. Because of the same, and now what we're trying to do, and this is really where we're at now on number Kaf Ches. Kaf Ches down in the Tiv. Let's look at that. Or what we want to do, and we're saying the word Baruch, we want to bring her into Atzilus. So we're in a situation where we're ach ba'ach, the Elul says the malchut the chatzila b'mekom b'heichel kodesh gedashim into its place, or in its place in the heichel kodesh gedashim. Kodesh gedashim the bria el makom shesham nolda b'dechidas etzilusa. Now this is a fact. He says that where is to bring her into Atzilus because that's where she originally was. Keneged hachazad is their anpin. Where was her position? Her position was next to the chest. Zer anpin b'nei mother sham ba'ach kasha acharacha devukos the ach the zer anpin, and she stands there as her back is stuck onto the back of zer anpin. Parts of shalom, and after that this is made into a complete parts of. That is, if a nachziran upon him, and she comes back around to be face to face with him. And now she's come out of Bria, and she's in her proper place in Atzilus. Sham parts of Shalom because Shlosha Kavim, she's now become 3 Kavim, and this is the way that it goes. Sham parts of Shalom because Shlosha Kavim, so now she has 3 lines. So the difference is whether or not she's in Atzilus. So if she's in Atzilus, then she's in her position, and she becomes panim with their anpin. So now let's look at this place we didn't cover yet. So let's look down below, also at the Shefach Karbanot down below. But let me read this part first. He says, Malchus the Chatzila Shenikra Nuk. Okay, we have no problem with that. But she doesn't become a complete parts of it one time. Or at least she doesn't become her full side. La'alos ad makom ba'ach rechachazet is their anpin, and Tzila, she should come to her place behind the chazet zer anpin. V'yesh lo arba shlavim. Shebekal echad b'chem ola v'nishlemes yosa. So each one of them, she comes to a higher place. Now let me see where I got here. It was number Vav. Let's just look at this. At the Tiv gave it to us, so let's look and see what he says. He always seems like to go into different problems. He's v'inyan huki arba b'chinas yesh ela malchus. So there are the 4 different b'chinas to malchus. So we said we keniska le'era bebir Mishnas Arba Rosh Hashana. So apparently that was early in the drash. So the le'el b'hakdama l'drash Rosh Hashana. Other than the hakdama, it says Issa bezecha b'lashon b'leil Rosh Hashana tov l'kro al shulchan. So he says these are instructions. He says what you should do is you should read al hashulchan at the table kol sheyito yadav l'mayim achronim before you do mayim achronim. In other words, after you're done eating, shekodim b'berchos hamazon. What do you read? So he says you should read Masechtas Rosh Hashana. Shehem arba prakim shal Mishnah. So we don't have a trouble with listening to what he's saying, but the kavan ki heim arba prakim. So he says the kavanah is that there are four different chapters there. Keneged arba osius yudke vavke. So this is the kavanah that you have when you start learning, and he says to read it. So yeah, I know that in Breslov that's what you do. The idea is to read it and chant it. Keneged arba osius avayim. And it also corresponds to the four different aspects of malchut. So you have the arba osios of the Havaya, and this is trying to understand what these four are. V'ayin b'birchas avos, and look over at the birchas avos, the Tefillas Rosh Hashana, the Kamon. I'm going to see more about this. Excuse me. V'ayin sham v'sham yizbayer arba bechidas amalchus and iskaras la'el. So we're going to explain them, but in more detail. But near Lodi is died to shemati b'mori zera b'pam achash elu arba bechidos heim sod arba osios shel shem adni. So he's going back. What does he mean by the four chapters? He says, well, the chapters correspond to Yudke Vavke, but now he also hears from the Rav that it corresponds to Adni. Four letters of that. Negdam heim arba prakim de besatnas Rosh Hashana niskar. He says v'kavona zu. Let me get a drink. I choked a little bit. Okay. So b'kriya shemal b'chidas Rosh Hashana v'arba b'chidas in iskarim near Maza b'Mishna Rishona shehi arba Rosh Hashanim. So this explanation, Daki arba bechilas yesh ala malchus nuk nezer anpen. So going over the same ground again, but he's really just quoting. Kanoda chatzleno ki kol davar shal kedusha b'kol makam sheshora nisher b'ben rosham sham kavua. So there's some impression, like a station that's established because it's an essence of its root in these four places. So he says, Sham Kabuli, Rosham Sham Kavua Tamidi, Lo Yamosh Misham, and it never leaves there. Veluchem Arba Bechinas. Now we're waiting to hear what the four Bechinas are. So we're corresponding to these four Bechinos of Rosh Hashanah, of the four Prakim. Oh, he Yosef Rosha Bria Kanoida, because she's at the head of Bria, as is known. Kibimea Chol Belailos. Excuse me, at the nighttime, you read to see Lamata Behechel Kodesh Kedash and Besod Miut HaYireach, which is the secret of Miut HaYireach. Now, it's just interesting to point out that, to me, that he says that that she goes down into the top of Bria. What about the fact that she actually goes down? She really appears in Asiya, or how does that work? Or is that a further generation of the same idea? I don't know why he says that. Lamata behechel kodesh kedash the bria besod miut hayireach. So that's all the further down that he says she goes. But we know v'sham nishach b'pechina rishona shalot tamed. So at that place where she's mismayat herself at the very top of Bria, he says that's a place b'china rishona shalot tamed. This is always her original b'china. Her position. Who tachas a yisod of zer anpen, and where is that position? That's underneath the yisod of zer anpen. So he says, what? In other words, she's. Let me just read this. Behechel kodesh kedash the bria besod miuta yurecha b'sham nishar b'kina b'shayna shalom tamed. And where is that? So it's tamed. Okay, that's the top of the head. V'chabbeis, the second one though, is all the way down at the bottom. Who tachas yisod the zer anpin is underneath the yisod the zer anpin, and I assume this is when she's mismayat herself, and not mismayat. This is after the nai of Ima leaves her. V'zera b'chu keneged the Tiferes, and this place is really corresponds to Tiferes. Now, I don't know how that works. But so, and then let me say, "V'chabebeis hu tachas yisod hazah." I skipped one. I'm sorry. V'chagimel hu keneged the teferis, and the third one is opposite teferis. V'chadalad hu keneged the das dezer anpin, and the fourth one is opposite the das dezer anpin. So this way, he says it sounds like it goes up from the top of Bria, and then goes all the way down to the dot, and then it starts growing up. So these are the four roots that we have to remember about malchus. V'nikrohim arba Rosh Hashanah, and they're called the four Rosh Hashanah. Ki heim arba roshim shalo, because they are the four heads that belong to her. That's the language. Adkan l'shana. So he said, "V'hine b'siddur Rebbe Shabsi hisker shtei kavanos elu." So he mentions the two kavanos that we say. What are they? Beperik Rishon kosful the kavim ba'oz yud d'shem b'vaya ba'oz aleph d'shem adni. So he says you combine them. You think of this as like a concept of a yichud between Havaya, which is their anpin, and malchus. So each one of them goes on a different parak. Echad d'shem adi, but parak hasheni kosvel l'kavim ba'oz hey d'shem b'vaya ba'oz dal d'shem adni, etc. B'chein b'shar parakim al zeh haderech, and then we see that all the rest of them go in the same way. Al zeh haderech. Amnam katzaz kasha, but there's a little bit of a problem here. Shebeseder sham os yud d'shem b'vaya v'chein os al d'shem adni al malchut kashihi b'bria. So this is talking about malchus, which is in bria. V'os hey rishayda d'shem b'vaya al malchut kashihi tachas yisod. Then she's already in Atzilos, but she's in that small place. It really should be exactly the opposite. He owes yud d'shem b'vaya tzarek l'rmos ala malchus. This is really supposed to talk about malchus because he connected the das, where she's up, really up high, opposite the das. Which is the top level. Biyosa. This is the very highest you could get to. I guess it means this is a place of Leah. Look, she adaya b'bria, not like she's still in a bria. She'oz he b'bedrega tachtoni, because that's much lower than everything else. You don't put the yud there. Anyway, that's an argument that he says, but Tzarech Ian kind of just slugs up the kavanah that you could have on Rosh Hashanah. But the idea of saying the four prakim and tying them onto these letters, well, that's what he said. So I think, where are we now? We're really on number Lamed Aleph. Number Lamed Aleph in the Tid says Kaniska the Erev B'Bir Mishnas Arba Rosh Hashanah. So mentioned up above, we were talking about the four Rosh Hashanah. Hey, that particular phrase. Keneged Arba Bechinos Elul Kasav Rab La'el. So corresponding to these four Bechinos, the Rab wrote up above, Sheyesh Lil Mod Besuda, the Besudas Leil Shabbat, Rosh Hashanah. Arba Prakim Shal Mesechtes Rosh Hashanah. Keneged Arba Elios Elul Hanir Mazim B'Mishna Arba Rosh Hashanah. So we just went through a little idea of that, but he's going to say more. Harishayna he bechina besod kesher shal tefillin. So he says that this is the way it is. The first one, the most top one, is going to be the place of the kesher shal tefillin shal rosh tachas gar shehem chabad dezah. So this, in other words, this is the highest place in the guf that you could get to before you get to the gar, which is in the rosh of Zeranpen. V'sham anichus shorish echad, and right there is where one root is left. He says, Anta Maska Lefara says Arba Aliyos, and now let's try to explain these four different Aliyos, Shal Malchut Peseder Lamata, in order, as we look at them from the top to the bottom. Harishayna he ba'achrei adas is their anpin, but Malcolm Kesher Shal Tefillin Sheba'achrei Rosh, which is on the back of the head. So this is the first Kavanah. If you use the way of Rav Shapsai, then you're going to get, this is going to be the Yud and the Aleph. He says, Shal Tefillin Sheba'achrei Rosh, Tachat Shlosh Rishonos Chabad Dezah, underneath that. V'sham Inichus Shorish Echad Nikra Leah. So this is the first root, which is called Leah. Now, there's got to be much more explanation to this to understand Leah, the difference between her. But at any rate, that's the root where Leah is located. Od yesh lo shorish sheni. She has another place which is at the Chag the Zer Anpin, which is his chest. V'sham kum makom achaza, and that's the place of the chest. Hashniya hi lemata yosef achrei tachachaza, but on the back of the chest. Tachas Chag the Zer Anpin, underneath the Chag the Zer Anpin. V'sham nicha shorish echad shenikra Rachel, and there she gets one root, which is called Rachel. Od yesh lo shorish shlish, but she has another root. Tachas nai the Zer Anpin, underneath the nai of Zer Anpin. Tachas yisod, underneath the yisod. V'sham hu nikra besod he achrona. So there she's called she is the secret of the final he shall avaya. So that's the second one. Hashlish is he the mata b'yosef tachas nai dezat. So the third one is really lower than that, underneath the nai the Zer Anpin. Tachas the yisod, underneath the yisod. B'sham he nechlalet b'shem. So there becomes incorporated, but the same parts of Zer Anpin, she becomes incorporated in the parts of Zer Anpin. I think that's what he means. Benikra he achrona sheb'shem Havaya, and she's called the final he of the name Havaya. She's down real low. Od yesh la shorish revi, but she has a fourth one. Lamata behechel kodesh kedosh, the bria, which is down below. That's really outside of Atzilus altogether. V'sham he besod the kuda achas kalula me'eser, and there she has all the parts. Hamadrega ha'revi is a tachtana beyoser, the really lowest place, the fourth level. He kasher malchus the chatzilus amedet b'dayim b'bria, is when malchus is not in Atzilus at all. It's still in bria. So let's see what this b'bria behechel kodesh kedoshim. V'sham yesh lo rak nekuda achas. Hakalula b'kol eses spheres, and there you see that there's only one nakuda. That nakuda has 10 spheres in it. But it doesn't. In other words, there's 10 parts, 10 working parts, but the parts don't work together. They're not in the parts of malchus, the chatzilus amedet the daim bebria behechel kodesh kedoshim, where she's still in bria at the hechel the kodesh kedoshim. A dayin ein lo eser sphere shalem. She's still, while she's in that position, she may have 10 spheros, but they're not complete. Like in Olam Atzilus, there you find completion. Shisham, he the parts of Shalom, because that's where you find is a complete parts of. Number Lamed Zion. He said, Nikwa Shem Adni. Sham Adni. I guess I'm not sure which is Shem or Sham. When she's in that position, that's when she's called Adni. So when we start the Shemona Esrei, we say that word Adni, you're talking about Malchus in Bria. But when she comes into Atzilus, Nikshra by a different name, Shem Havaya de Ben. Okay, that is interesting in of itself. She is Havaya now, which I guess, I'm not sure exactly, but she is. V'ayin b'parshas Chai Sarah, as a look over the Be'inyan Ma'aras HaMachvela, he said, B'tavin Ma'inyan Arba B'chindas Elul Hetiv, and there you're going to understand really well what they're talking about. B'shara Pesukim Nidbrishocha B'arba B'chindas Elul Sheyesh B'nuk. So now we've explained there are 4 different stages of the Nuk. Okay, we have a little cutout here right now. Okay, I'm back again. Start up at the top of B'shar Pesukim in a light print. It says Nidrisho Arba Bechinus Elush Yesh Benuk Barba Shemesh Yesh Lamaras Hamachfela. So the 4 different names that we find in the cave of Machpelah. Harushayna Nikras Ma'aras Hamachpela. So the first one is called the doubled, let's say the doubled cave. Hashen is Nikras Machpelastan. The second one is just called the double. Oh, the Gedichs of Yaakov Sadai, they Ephraim Asher b'Machpelah. So he says that it went over to the side of Abraham, and there it's just called Machpelah. Ashlish is Nikra Sada HaMachpelah. The other was called the field of Machpelah. But Revi is Nikra Ma'aras Sada HaMachpelah, and the third one is called the cave of the field of Machpelah. Now they're all talking about Machpelah, which means Machpelah means doubled. So what are we trying to do here now? We're trying to bring her up, and then to extend her, to pour her or push her up, extender, we'll use extender, so that to extend her upper, to her upper reach, of the four that we mentioned, the four stages. Let's extend those stages. Rosh Hashana tzarich lekavan la'alos as a malchut ba'arba bedregos and iskarim la'el. So we mentioned it before, and this is what our idea must be. Until she finally reaches that upper level, which is the level of the root called Leah. Shasham oilach benuk b'Rosh Hashana, because that's where the nuk is going to go on Rosh Hashana. Sham zivug elyon shal Yisrael v'Leah. So now we have a yichud that takes place. He says a very high level of yichud. Na'as Sham, there's going to be there. Zivug elyon, the highest level of yichud shal Yisrael v'Rachel. So I thought I was going to say Yisrael v'Leah, because that's usually where it goes, but he didn't say that. So he says this is the whole yichud. But it's a yichud of Yisroel. Now, because Yisroel means different things sometimes. Sometimes it means from the chaz of the mala. Sometimes it means the entire zeranpin. So that's where she could go up. And then you have the yichud during the weekday of Yaakov and Rachel. So this would be a higher level yichud that's going to take place on Rosh Hashanah. So I guess we'll stop here. We're 1 minute over. Okay, call to. Thank you, Rabbi.